Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. It's easy for me to feel that these words are not directed at me. After all, I wasn't there the day that they nailed Jesus to the cross. And I like to think that I'm a good person. Perhaps you feel the same way that I do, that this has got nothing to do with you. I remember the horror I felt when I first visited the Dachau Memorial and realized that the Nazi concentration camp was in the midst of a city, that surrounding the walls of this camp were people who lived and breathed the same air as people who were suffering so horrendously on the other side. I was shocked. Why didn't the people rise up? How could they go on with their regular lives as if nothing was happening? We look in disgust at those who committed the despicable acts, but is the silence not also incriminating? Just over 20 years ago, I had a French teacher who had recently moved to Canada after fleeing the genocide in Rwanda. He spoke in broken English and was easily flustered, and one day I remember I had a classmate who suggested that we should all hide so that he wouldn't be able to start the class. It was a cheap move, designed to get a rise out of someone who was already easily unnerved. We knew it was wrong, but we still did it. All of us, sheep, our guts telling us this isn't okay. I work at a building on Higgins in Maine, and some days I think I'm a good person, but other days I just don't have the energy to look the person in the eye asking for change. I don't have the grace to give them the dignity that they so deserve, their God-given dignity. It's easier to look away, to remain silent, to resign myself to the circumstances. Father, forgive us for what we are doing and for what we fail to do. Just think about it. When Jesus died on the cross, he chose to forgive us, the people mocking him, ignoring him, weeping for him, unable to save him. And not only did he forgive us, but he chose to leave his reputation in our hands. Doesn't that blow your mind? I confess that I don't feel the need for the cross most days because I believe that I am good. And yet when we consider our history and our stories, we realize that we have more in common with those from the past that we are quick to judge. It's in our little daily sins, the ones that we excuse away, that position us in an uprising against Christ. My friends don't believe that God exists. His absence in the face of horror is their thesis. Our silence is their proof. We rise up against him in our unwillingness to believe that we must practice a life of daily confession, not only confession of sin, but also confession of belief. I'm convinced that if we confessed, it would change not only our own lives, but also the lives of everyone around us, that there would be no doubting that Jesus came and that he died and that he lives. And yet, here we are, Good Friday, a day when we come to contemplate our confession, to think deeply on the sacrifice and generosity of a man thousands of years ago for not only the people then, but for the people of every day, decade, and century since then. Forgiveness for those who have done wrong, like the criminal who hung on the cross beside Jesus, but also forgiveness for people like me, the one who remains silent in the face of darkness. We look to the cross, we pause, and then comes the space for our confession. What do you say?